My wife cheated on me with her boss and convinced me to sign over our $300, $0 family estate during their business collaboration, only to find out she's secretly planning to sue me for half of everything to cover her affair's expenses. Hello everyone. Dear listeners, please share your thoughts in the comments section below. And don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Now, let's begin the video. Using a throwaway for obvious reasons, with certain specifics modified to preserve anonymity. I never thought I'd be the guy writing about how my wife, Lisa, turned out to be a lying, cheating bitch. Honestly, I thought we had a good thing going, married for 7 years, 2 kids, a nice house, and a business we built together. Things weren't perfect, sure, but I trusted her. That trust shattered in one night, and I still can't believe how everything spiraled out so quickly. It all started around 6 months ago. Lisa had been acting a little off, more irritable, distracted, and secretive about her phone. She'd hide it whenever I walked into the room. At first, I just thought she was stressed from work. She's a marketing manager at this firm downtown, and her boss is a real piece of work, smooth, charming, and apparently very persuasive. I always felt something was a little off about their relationship, but I didn't want to jump to conclusions. Still, the little things kept piling up. Then last month, I started noticing strange charges on our bank statement. Small amounts, mostly at night, in places I didn't recognize. I brushed it off, thinking maybe she was just shopping or meeting friends. But one night I found her phone lying face down on the kitchen counter. I casually picked it up and the notifications popped up. There were texts between her and full of flirtatious nonsense, talking about their project, working late, and even some explicit stuff. I swear I felt my stomach drop. I hadn't even suspected she was cheating on me, and now I had proof right in my hand. I started digging deeper. I looked through her emails, her social media. There were messages she deleted but didn't realize I'd seen. They were full of lies, how she needed help with her career, how she couldn't wait to see him again, and even how she wanted to keep this secret from me. I was furious, but more than anything, I felt betrayed. She convinced me to sign over our family estate 300 during some bogus business collaboration she claimed would make us richer. I was naive enough to trust her, and now I see it was all part of her plan to hide her affair and cover her expenses. Then came the worst part. I came home unexpectedly one evening, and I saw her sneaking out of the house with her purse. I called her name and she froze. Her face went pale and she tried to lie her way out of it, saying she was going to meet a friend for a quick dinner, but I knew better. I saw the lipstick on her collar, the way her eyes darted, and I just knew. When I confronted her, she didn't even try to deny it. Instead, she got bitchy, told me I was overreacting, and that I was just paranoid because I didn't trust her. That was the moment I realized she'd been lying to my face for months. The emotional impact hit me like a freight train. I felt a mixture of shock, rage, and deep sadness. How could she do this to me, to our family? I thought we had something real, something worth fighting for. But she'd been planning her escape, running her affair with right under my nose, convincing me to sign over our life savings to cover her business, while she was secretly screwing her boss. I felt so stupid for trusting her, but more than that, I felt humiliated. And I didn't even know what to do next. All I could think about was how betrayed I felt, and how I had to figure out a way to get even. After that night, everything changed. I couldn't sleep. I kept replaying her lies, her sneaky glances, the way she tried to gaslight me into thinking I was imagining things. It was like waking up from a nightmare I couldn't wake up from. I started going through the house, looking for more clues, more evidence. I found her phone again, this time hidden in her closet behind some old clothes. I almost didn't want to look, but I knew I had to. When I finally unlocked it, I discovered a series of messages that made my blood boil. There were pictures of her and kissing, touching in bed. I saw plans about meetings, secret dates, and even a detailed schedule she'd made to make sure she could see him without me catching on. She'd been planning this for months. The worst part, she convinced me to sign over our estate 300 under the pretense that it was for a business opportunity with her boss. I remember sitting there, thinking how naive I'd been. She lied to my face about everything, using my trust and my money to fuel her affair. I knew I had to confront her again, but this time I was ready. I sat her down the next day and I told her I knew everything. Her face twisted into this bitchy sneer and she started spinning her lies again. She said I was overreacting, that I was jealous, and that was just a business partner. She even had the nerve to say I was paranoid, that I was making things up in my head. But I wasn't stupid. I had proof. I showed her the pictures, the messages, everything. That's when she snapped, telling me I was ruining her career, that she needed to save her job, and that I was just a jealous, insecure husband. The emotional toll was brutal. I felt like I'd been punched in the gut. My stomach was twisted, my head spinning. How could she betray me like this? After everything we'd built? I was furious, but inside I also felt a deep sadness, like I'd lost the woman I thought I knew. It was a betrayal on every level. I'd always been the one working hard, providing for us, trusting her to do right by our family. And now I saw how she'd used me, how she'd played me for a fool. I started thinking about what to do next. I couldn't stay married to someone who lied so blatantly, who used me and my trust as a stepping stone for her own selfish needs. I knew I had to plan my next move carefully. I decided I'd dig even deeper into the financial mess she'd created. That's when I found out about the lawsuit she was secretly planning. She was going to sue me for half of everything, claiming I'd mismanaged the estate she convinced me to hand over. I felt my blood boil again. She manipulated me into giving her everything, and now she was trying to screw me over even more. I realized I couldn't just walk away. I had to fight back. I started gathering all the evidence I could: bank statements, emails, texts. I even contacted a lawyer to see what my rights were. I knew she'd try to squeeze me out, to take what she thought she deserved, but I wasn't going to let her get away with it. This was about more than just money now. It was about my dignity, my family, and stopping her from destroying everything I'd worked for. I didn't know exactly what kind of revenge I'd take yet, but I knew I needed to make her pay for what she'd done. I felt a mix of anger and determination. The betrayal cut deep, but I wasn't going down without a fight. If she thought she could cheat on me, lie to my face, and then sue me to cover her tracks, she had another thing coming. I was going to expose her for the liar she was and make sure she paid the price. The game was on, and I was ready to play it all the way to the end. After I gathered all the evidence and made up my mind to fight back, everything moved so fast. I hired a lawyer, someone sharp, who knew how to handle these kinds of manipulations, and started building my case. Meanwhile, Lisa was still acting like she was the victim. She'd call me constantly, crying, spinning stories about how she just wanted a little excitement, how I was being so controlling, and how she'd never meant for it to get so out of hand. Yeah, right, she had no shame. The way she lied, I swear she could sell ice to an Eskimo. One night I decided to confront her again, but this time with a plan. I wanted her to see I wasn't backing down. I told her I knew about her secret lawsuit plans, and I told her I had evidence of her affair with. She looked stunned for a second, then her bitchy mask slipped back on. She told me I was crazy, that I was just jealous, and that she'd never do anything to hurt her family. That's when I dropped the bomb about the $300 estate she'd convinced me to sign over, and how she was planning to use that money to cover her expenses with, then sue me to get even more. Her reaction was priceless. She started yelling, calling me paranoid, bitter, and jealous, trying to deny everything. But I had proof: screenshots, bank statements, everything. I told her flat out that I was done being played. If she thought she could manipulate me, she was dead wrong. I told her I'd see her in court if she tried to take what wasn't hers. Her face turned red with rage, and she stormed out of the house, screaming about how I was ruining her career and her life. But I knew I had the upper hand now. In the days that followed, I kept pushing forward. I worked with my lawyer to prepare for the legal fight. I also started making arrangements to protect what was left of our assets. I put a freeze on accounts, hired a forensic accountant, and documented every penny. Lisa's scheme was pretty obvious. She'd used her business collaboration with as an excuse to cover her affair, and now she was trying to use the legal system to squeeze even more out of me. I felt a mixture of disgust and resolve. I wasn't going to let her get away with it. Meanwhile, Lisa kept up her act, pretending to be the victim. She told friends and family I was crazy and accusing her without proof. That made me furious. I knew the truth, and I wasn't about to let her spin her lies. I even hired a private investigator to see if I could find out what she was planning behind my back. Turns out, she was already talking to a lawyer about filing the lawsuit. She'd been planning it all along, using her affair as leverage. That was the moment I realized her entire game was about to blow up in her face. I also started thinking about my kids. They deserved to know the truth someday, but I didn't want to hurt them with the full extent of her betrayal just yet. For now, I focused on protecting what was mine and making sure she couldn't take everything I'd worked so hard for. I was furious, yes, but I also knew I had to stay calm and strategic. If I blew up now, I might lose everything. So I kept my head, kept gathering evidence, and prepared for the inevitable showdown. Looking back, I realize how quickly everything unraveled. One moment I was a happy husband, trusting my wife. The next, I was fighting to save my reputation and my assets. Lisa's lies, her manipulation, her blatant cheating, it all hit me hard. But I also learned that sometimes you have to fight dirty to protect what's yours. And if someone thinks they can lie and cheat their way into your life and fortune, they're dead wrong. I'll never forget the shock, the rage, and the heartbreak, but I also know now that I'm stronger than I ever thought I could be. By the time I had all my ducks in a row, Lisa's attitude started to shift. She was still trying to act innocent, but it was clear she was panicking. The more evidence I laid out, the more her bitchy facade cracked. She started throwing tantrums, yelling at me in front of the kids, accusing me of ruining everything, claiming I was crazy for even suspecting her. Honestly, I didn't care anymore about her excuses. She'd lied. So much that her words didn't even register. I just wanted her out of my life and to keep what was rightfully mine. One evening, she confronted me in the living room, her eyes blazing with anger and desperation. She spat out, "You think you can just take everything from me? This isn't over. I have lawyers too, and I will sue you for half of everything. You signed over that estate, and I'll make damn sure I get my fair share." That's when I realized her real plan. She wasn't just cheating. She was trying to take everything we had built, using the law as her weapon. Her smug attitude, her lies, all part of a bigger scheme to screw me over. I looked her straight in the eye, calm but firm. I told her I wasn't going to let her do this. I had proof of her affair, her lies, and her attempts to manipulate the system. I explained that I was prepared to fight her in court, and I'd do everything in my power to protect my assets and our children. She sneered and said I was just jealous, that I was too insecure, and that she'd win in the end. That was the moment I knew I had to escalate things. I couldn't just sit back and let her walk all over me. In the days that followed, I filed for legal separation and started the process of defending myself against her lawsuit. I also reached out to a forensic accountant to trace every dollar she'd spent on her affair with. Turns out, she'd been funneling money through various accounts, trying to hide her expenses. I was furious. My wife, the woman I trusted, had not only betrayed me emotionally but was actively trying to steal from me. Her plan was clear. She wanted to drain my resources, cover her affair's expenses, and then sue me for half of everything, including the estate she convinced me to sign over. One night, I caught her trying to contact directly, probably to coordinate her next move. I knew I had to cut her off completely. I told her I'd be taking legal action, and if she didn't stop her manipulations, I'd go after her for fraud and emotional damages. She screamed, called me crazy, and accused me of trying to ruin her career, but I didn't care. I had my proof, and I was ready to fight dirty if I had to. I realized that her bitchy attitude was just her way of hiding her fear. She knew she'd been caught, and she didn't like it one bit. Meanwhile, I kept my cool in front of the kids, knowing I had to keep things as normal as possible for them. I didn't want them to see the chaos, but I also knew they deserved to know the truth eventually. I kept gathering evidence, talking to lawyers, and planning my next moves. I also started to think about what life would look like once this was all over. I wasn't going to let her ruin me, even if she thought she could. She'd underestimated me big time. Looking back, I realize how close I came to losing everything. my marriage, my money, my peace of mind. But I also learned that sometimes the only way to fight betrayal is to fight back harder. Lisa's lies, her manipulations, her sneaky plans, they all showed me that she was willing to do whatever it took to get what she wanted. But I'm not a fool. I've got my evidence, my lawyer, and a resolve to see this through. No matter what, I refuse to let her walk away with my life savings or my dignity. The game's just starting, and I'm more determined than ever to come out on top. At this point, I'd gone from feeling stunned and betrayed to being downright furious. I'd spent countless nights poring over documents, talking to my lawyer, and planning how to shut her down. Every new piece of evidence I found just fueled my resolve. Lisa's attempts to manipulate the situation, her bitchy attitude, and her outright lies only made me more determined to fight her legally and financially. I knew she was trying to pull every trick in the book to keep her affair hidden and to squeeze me out of what was ours, but I wasn't going to let her get away with it. One day, she made her move. She hired her own lawyer, probably thinking she could outsmart me, or at least slow me down. But I had already anticipated her next step. I had everything documented. Her secret messages, the bank transfers, the schedule she made to meet, even her attempts to hide her expenses. I brought all of it to my lawyer, who told me I had a solid case. She was clearly trying to defraud me, and her lawsuit was a sham. The more I saw her trying to manipulate the system, the more convinced I became that I had to hit her where it hurt. I decided to file a countersuit for fraud and emotional damages. I wanted her to understand that lying, cheating, and trying to steal my estate wasn't just wrong, it was illegal. I also started preparing for court. I hired a private investigator to follow her, just to make sure I had everything covered. Turns out she'd been diverting money into secret accounts, probably to pay for her affair and her lawyer fees. I couldn't believe how deep her plans went. All this time I thought I was just supporting my family, only to find out she was planning her escape, using me as a pawn. Meanwhile, she kept up her act, pretending to be the innocent victim. She'd cry to her friends and family, saying I was crazy, possessive, and that I'd lost my mind. That just made me more determined to see this through. I knew her game. She was trying to paint me as the villain so she could save face. But I had proof, and I wasn't afraid to use it. I knew that in court, facts would speak louder than her accusations. One particularly explosive moment came when I confronted her in front of our kids. I told her I was done playing her games and that I'd expose her lies in court. She snapped, calling me a jealous bastard, and said she'd ruin me if I went through with it. But I didn't care about her threats anymore. I'd already made up my mind. I was going to fight her for everything, including the estate she tried to steal from me. I realized that her bitchy attitude was just her way of masking her desperation. Behind that, I saw fear, fear of losing everything she'd been scheming for. I also began to reach out to other professionals, financial advisors, forensic accountants, and even a divorce specialist. I wanted to make sure I was covering all bases. I knew she'd try to spin things in her favor, but I was prepared. I wanted to make her see that her lies and manipulations wouldn't work anymore. I was determined to hold on to what was mine and to make her pay for her betrayal. Looking back, I realize how much I've grown through this nightmare. I learned that sometimes the person you trust most can turn out to be your worst enemy. I also learned that fighting back, legally, financially, emotionally, is the only way to protect yourself when someone is trying to destroy you from within. Lisa thought she could cheat her way out of this, but she underestimated my resolve. This isn't over yet, but I know I'm on the right path. I'll fight for my family, my money, and my dignity, no matter how dirty the fight gets. Now, looking back, I realize that the worst part wasn't just the betrayal itself, but how it forced me to confront everything I thought I knew about trust and loyalty. Lisa's lies, her manipulations, her blatant attempts to steal from me, they all showed me that sometimes people you love can turn into your biggest enemies. I've learned that in these situations, you either stand your ground or lose everything. I chose to stand, and I'm glad I did. The court hearings are still ongoing, but I feel more confident than ever. I've got the evidence, the legal backing, and the clarity that I need to see this through. I've also come to accept that some things can't be fixed, that some betrayals run so deep that all you can do is fight to protect what's left. My wife, Lisa, thought she could manipulate her way out of this mess, but she underestimated my resolve and the truth. In the end, honesty and integrity matter more than any lie she told or any scheme she cooked up. I've realized that revenge isn't about destruction, but about reclaiming what's rightfully yours. I wanted justice, and I got it by standing firm, by refusing to be a victim. I've learned to trust myself again, to rebuild my confidence, and to focus on my children and my future. I still feel the sting of betrayal, but I also feel stronger, more aware of what people are capable of when they're driven by greed and selfishness. To anyone reading this who might be going through something similar, I'll say this: don't ignore the signs. Trust your instincts, gather evidence, and don't be afraid to fight for what's yours. Sometimes the people closest to you can surprise you with their capacity for betrayal, but that doesn't mean you have to be a victim. Stand your ground, stay calm, and use every resource available to protect yourself and your family. It's a brutal lesson, but a necessary one. In the end, I've come out of this stronger, wiser, and more cautious. Lisa's betrayal cost me a lot emotionally and financially, but it also taught me the importance of resilience and self-reliance. I'll never forget what she did, but I refuse to let it define me. I'm rebuilding piece by piece, and I know I'll come out of this better because I had to, and I did.